You're watching WJZ-TV with Baltimore's most watched 6 p.m. newscast. In real-time closed captioning for the hearing impaired. This is Eyewitness News at 6 with Al Sanders and Denise Koch.
Just yesterday, the grand jury refused to indict a police officer in the death of George Hite.
But tonight, questions are raised following the release of the autopsy, which lists Hite's death as a homicide.
Hite died of injuries suffered during his arrest by a city police officer. Legal expert Dick Gelfman joins us now to explain this apparent discrepancy between the medical examiner's report and the grand jury decision.
You know, when you use the word homicide and murder, it seems to begin to point fingers of blame somewhere, but that's what we're going to start to straighten out. It certainly seems inconsistent because most people probably associate the word homicide with the word murder, but that simply is not always the case.
Only yesterday it appeared to be case closed in the case of the death of George Hite. A Baltimore City grand jury refused to indict the police officer in whose custody Hite was injured. Conflicting stories said that his feet were kicked out from underneath him while he was being arrested, or that he simply fell. In either event, the grand jury did not indict. The medical examiner, however, today ruled that the death was a homicide, a word that bothers Hite's family.
I just couldn't believe that when I see that word on a report, on the medical examiner's report, that the grand jury wouldn't come back with an indictment. It just caught me off guard to see that word on the report.
Even though the word homicide was used, the chief medical examiner today said that that does not mean someone is at fault or criminally responsible.
We're not ready to let go. I don't want to let go at this time. I believe that, I just believe that something went wrong and my brother is dead as a result of that.
Well, I think you can understand the family's feelings, and I think you can understand the confusion concerning this whole ruling. What is homicide? Start there.
Homicide is simply the killing of one human being by another human being. For example, somebody comes in your house, 3 o'clock in the morning. They break in a window. You pick up a gun. You shoot them. They're inside your house, standing over your bed, ready to shoot. You kill them. That is a homicide. You have committed a homicide. You're not guilty of any crime, but it's a homicide because it's simply the killing of one human being by another human being. But as the medical examiner said, not every homicide is culpable.
Now, if we had seen wrongful death, that's different.
That's different, Al. That would be a murder. A wrongful homicide, one for which you can affix blame. That is a murder. It might be a second degree, a first degree, it might be a manslaughter, but there are degrees of culpability. But just because the medical examiner said homicide here, everybody starts going around, gee, that must be, you know, because the grand jury refused to indict. So the point I'm getting at is it's not really inconsistent for a grand jury to say we don't see a culpable crime, and for the medical examiner to say it was a homicide.
A little unusual, though.
Well, it happens, and it makes people stand up and look at it, but it does happen.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Baltimore County Police have their first break in the search for a missing Ruxton woman. Susan Harrison disappeared last month after failing to meet her son for a planned out-of-town trip. She hasn't been seen since. Then Tuesday, police found Harrison's car at National Airport. It is believed that the car was parked at National Airport in D.C. on August 6th, one day after she disappeared.
We're trying to get a list of all the flights that went out of National during the time that the car was abandoned, we think sometime on the 6th, and trying to find her name on the flight list just in case she voluntarily left.
Though police are checking the possibility Harrison may have wanted to disappear, Doarnberger says there is still a strong suspicion of foul play. Well, a man who sexually abused 2 young girls has been released from jail early, and that has enraged one victim's family. That family tells Suzanne Collins they cannot understand why the judge would agree to release the man who served just 4 months behind bars.
And Denise, we should warn people some of this material may be offensive. The man was originally charged with having intercourse with this girl when she was just 10, and there is a second victim. It's a case of a plea bargain and a suspended sentence, and in the end, an early release. One girl's family says it was dreadful when their daughter was sexually abused, but dealing with the judicial system was nearly as painful.
I just more or less want to know how that judge can lay his head down on his pillow every night and go to sleep, knowing that he left a man that destroyed my daughter walk on the streets. It is just so unfair.
Well, if it happens to anybody else, I say don't go to the courts. Shoot the son of a bitch.
This couple is terribly upset. Their daughter was sexually abused when she was 10 by someone they knew well, and she wasn't the only victim. But the defendant, James Bolyard, was released from jail yesterday, early. At first, Bolyard faced 18 different counts, everything from rape to assault, and he could have been put away for a long time. But there was a plea bargain, and he admitted guilt to 2 child abuse charges. The judge gave him a 5-year sentence, but suspended most of that jail time. Of that 5 years, all but 1 was suspended, and the judge said Bolyard could leave jail during the day to work. Yesterday, Bolyard's lawyer asked the judge to let him out early, and he was released. He'd only served 4 months, but he was ordered to attend a sex offender program and to avoid the victims.
He tried to get me, he tried to have sex with me. He said that if I told anybody, he was going to kill me.
The judge refused to make any comment on the case. The girl, who is now 12, is undergoing therapy. She is still fearful, and she overreacts when her father just puts his arm around her mother. She says she is still afraid of Bolyard.
And every time I went to bed, I was afraid that he was going to come through my window.
Well, when you think about it every day, every time you see a child her age, and you're thinking about it all day long when you're riding by yourself in a car or a truck like I do, and it eats at you. It's like a cancer.
So he's only served 4 months for the crime he did. He pleaded guilty to child abuse, but I want people to know that he's a sexual assaulter.
And Denise, as I said, we couldn't get a comment from Judge John Turnbull, and also we couldn't get a comment from James Bolyard. We reached his mother, left a message. He did not call us back.
To be very clear, he was sentenced originally to 5 years. But most of that was then set aside, and he only served 4 months.
Well, that was set aside. He was told to serve 1 year. Then he asked for an early release. It was granted yesterday. He only served 4 months.
Well, the family, as you can imagine, and we just saw, very, very upset in this. What sort of legal recourse do they have? Any at all?
Not really. They say it frustrates them because he can appeal a conviction. He can appeal the length of his sentence, as he did, and get out. And yet all they can do is write the judge.
Any form of protection they could ask for?
No, I don't believe so.
All right. Thank you, Suzanne.
A former Catholic school teacher accused of sexually abusing students back in the 1970s is facing 2 more multi-million-dollar lawsuits. The suits were filed yesterday against John Merzbacher, who's scheduled to stand trial next month on charges of abusing 15 teenagers when he taught at Catholic Community Middle School in South Baltimore. But a judge is now trying to decide if some of the suits against Merzbacher should be dismissed because a 3-year statute of limitations has lapsed. In a Westminster courtroom today, a psychiatrist testified a teenager accused of killing his mother and her boyfriend suffers from severe mental disorders. Jason DeLong has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to charges he stabbed to death his mother and her boyfriend last summer. Today, a psychiatrist said DeLong has severe post-traumatic stress and another disorder that comes from a trauma that suffered over and over. DeLong's lawyers contend he was abused throughout his childhood.
Another car theft in Columbia late last night. This time it ended in a police chase. Howard County Police say that 7 juveniles ranging in age from 11 to 17 stole a woman's Acura Legend and then tried to elude police. Ron Matz reports as car theft becomes more commonplace, the thieves are getting younger.
Walked out and the car wasn't there. Yeah, I was shocked.
It happened in the village of Longreach around 11:30 last night. A man driving in the area saw a juvenile behind the wheel of a familiar-looking Acura Legend. It belonged to his sister-in-law. He used his cellular phone to call the police.
He was on a car phone following the suspect vehicle, and there was an additional vehicle that apparently had brought the suspects out to the area. Officers who responded began a pursuit when the 2 vehicles split.
Police pursued the stolen Acura for about a mile when it struck a tree here on Tamar Drive. It then bounced back onto the roadway where it then hit a marked Howard County police car. That car, as well as an unmarked Howard County police vehicle, were damaged. The woman whose car was stolen did not want to be identified, but she told me she's not the first to lose her car to thieves in this neighborhood.
I usually feel safe here. I don't feel like, like there'd be any problems. There have been other car thefts in the area, but for the most part it seems quiet.
But police say that quiet was shattered when the juvenile suspect stole this minivan in Baltimore City and came to Columbia to try to steal other cars. The juvenile suspects include one who is 11 years old.
I would say it's a little younger than what we usually deal with car thieves, but most of our arrests in auto theft are younger, are juveniles.
A familiar story to many in Howard County.
Mine was stolen in Ellicott City a year and a half, almost 2 years ago.
And the latest victim is left to figure out how it all happened.
It had the regular car alarm that was built in the car, and I never heard it go off. I was in the house and the car was in the driveway.
In Columbia, Ron Matz, Channel 13, Eyewitness News.
After being charged, 4 of the suspects were released to the custody of their parents or guardians. 3 others were taken to a juvenile detention center. The 2 Howard County police officers involved in the chase were not seriously hurt.
A federal judge in Alabama gives final approval to a multi-billion-dollar settlement between breast implant makers and women who have them. Today's ruling clears the way for court-appointed administrators to begin dispersing the money to the more than 90,000 plaintiffs. For a Baltimore woman who's been part of the fight, this victory is more than money.
Nobody would take me seriously about this thing. And after years of suffering and all through this, it's about time that something is being done about it, because as far as I'm concerned, the manufacturers knew. There's no way the manufacturers couldn't have known, with all the women that have had these implants, of the problems that have gone down.
Women who apply for compensation under the settlement must do so by September 16th in order to get their checks next spring. Any woman who has a problem with a silicone implant over the next 30 years would also be eligible to apply for compensation. For the second time this week, a report of maggots found in a Hershey's chocolate bar. This time, the candy was purchased at a South Baltimore carryout. Margaret Hawk says that she bought a Hershey's with almonds and had eaten part before she noticed the infestation.
Children don't pay attention to what they eat. They're running, they're playing, they go and they buy junk and they eat it. I mean, I know how I felt when I realized I had eaten half of a candy bar. It took me 15 minutes to get my stomach back in order. That's my only concern, is children.
Eyewitness News contacted the Hershey's company, which in turn contacted Hawk. They say that they'll check the store where she bought the candy. Earlier this week, an Odenton woman filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Hershey and the store where she bought a chocolate bar she says was full of maggots.
One section of Druid Heights came to a standstill today as neighbors watched 150 city and federal police officers in action during a major drug sweep. Stan Saunders is standing by live in that neighborhood now, where residents are applauding police efforts to help make the area a safer place to live. Stan?
Well, Denise, it's a lot quieter, much more quieter than all of the activity from earlier today when so many policemen and policewomen were out here. Ironically, it was neighbors, residents who worked with police directly by calling them and informing them of drug activity here, hoping to help rid their neighborhood of all of the negativity associated with it. A lot of people I talked with today say they're sick and tired of such drug activity and they're not going to take it anymore. Little children peacefully playing with their toys outdoors. It paints a picture of how things should be in this community. But in the 1900 block of Robert Street, the picture usually wasn't so nice before scores of lawmen and women showed up today.
Yeah, I'm glad to see, if they doing wrong, I'm glad to see them, you know, because innocent kids be getting hurt.
Did you see a lot of guns, a lot of violence?
Oh, yeah, I see them running up and down the street with pistols and dope ads, you know, chasing one another.
Besides this, we're also doing 24, 30 arrest warrants.
15 homes in this Druid Heights community were raided today. Those targeted by police were described as mid-level street dealers.
Sales, distribution, use. There were 50 arrests before today, 16 arrests today, 15 search and seizure warrants. It's a pretty big deal for us.
Location 14, we have 1 female, we have 1 male.
Today's high-profile raid netted 9 arrests, 2 kilos of cocaine, and $14,000 in cash. While one suspect was being led away, he said,
"I'll be back. Guys, you better be ready because I'm going to be trying to go."
Some neighbors say there are ways to prevent suspects from returning too soon.
Do like they did years ago. Get them a job busting rock.
Chain gang.
Chain gang, there you go. Chain gang like my uncle was. He was on a chain gang. And when he come out, he had more trouble. Then bust rock.
He went straight.
He went straight, yes he did.
For years now, many Baltimoreans have been hearing how they must take back their own neighborhoods and rescue it from the vice grip of drug activity and the violence associated with it. Well, today it happened, thanks to residents working directly with law enforcement.
Folks, you know, they're just tired of this, you know. They have to day in, day out,
They got to live among folks that want to come in and destroy their communities.
It's rough, you know, but I'm saying I live inside, but it will help if we got people that stick out and stick together and help.
Okay. Now, police say they were looking for 16 suspects today, and late this afternoon from police is that they have arrested so far 7 men and 6 women, Denise.
Well, Stan, certainly the new police commissioner, Thomas Frazier, has been very visible since he took office. How many high-profile sweeps have there been since that time? Do you know?
Well, let's see. Commissioner Frazier came in office in January, and so far there have been 4 high-profile drug raids. Let's see, one of them was really the one on Greenmount Avenue, if you remember, several months ago. Since then, they have been a lot smaller, including today's, but from what the city sheriff and the police commissioner told us, you can expect a whole lot more. Denise?
All right. Thank you, Stan. Stan Saunders reporting live from Druid Heights.
Why would a man armed with an assault rifle try to get into a busy television studio in the heart of New York City? That's what police are trying to figure out after the tragic death of a stagehand.
Police say he drove here from Charlotte, North Carolina, carrying a small arsenal. Then yesterday at Rockefeller Center, 46-year-old William Tager apparently snapped. A tourist from Austria watched through the lens of his video camera as Tager allegedly shot an NBC stagehand in the back, walked to his car, and prepared to drive away.
I see the people running away in panic, and a police officer who captured a boy on the ground and put him on the handcuffs.
Police say the carnage could have been much worse. The murder weapon, an AK-47, was fully loaded, and in the trunk of Tager's car, they allegedly found a semi-automatic pistol and ammunition. Investigators say the gunman knocked on the back door of the Today Show studios. The security guard spotted the rifle dangling from his coat, slammed the door, and called 911. Police say Tager returned 20 minutes later, saw 33-year-old Therone Montgomery motioning to police, and opened fire.
It's strange to think that something like so violent could happen, you know, right outside of my own office building in Midtown where, you know, it's supposed to be all business. It just doesn't seem like the place where something like that could happen.
Today, New Yorkers appeared more alarmed than tourists.
You expect to see those kinds of things happening in this type of a setting.
In Charlotte, Tager once owned a textile company, but neighbors say most recently he traded motorcycles out of his house.
He always spoke to anybody that was out in the complex standing around that lived here. Real nice guy.
Police say Tager purchased the assault rifle about 2 weeks ago. They would not say where, but they did describe North Carolina as an easy access state.
Police reported that Tager has told them he hated network television. He's been charged with second-degree murder and weapons violations.
A gruesome discovery in Chicago has brought an end to the search for an 11-year-old murder suspect. A boy's body was found under a railroad viaduct on the city's south side today. He had been shot in the head. Police believe he is the young gang member suspected of killing a 14-year-old girl last weekend. Shavon Dean was hit by a stray bullet when a suspect opened fire on a group of boys in Chicago. Police say the suspect, who was 11 years old, had a long police record.
He's only 11 years old. And I don't understand justice. If they say he had 22 counts of whatever they said he had, why was he leased out of? The kid was sick. He needed help a long time ago.
The body found under the viaduct hasn't been confirmed to be the 11-year-old, but police say they both have a tattoo.